my daughter in the dark, right under her own son's bed. I spent 3 weeks listening to his lies, believing my little girl was just sick. When I finally ripped the truth out of the shadows, I realized he hadn't just stolen her life. He was trying to erase mine, too. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Let me back up and tell you how a simple missed dinner turned into a living nightmare. My name is Robert. I'm a contractor. I spent 40 years building houses. I know the strength of foundations and the smell of fresh sawdust. I thought I knew how to build a life, too. It started on a Sunday. Sarah, my daughter, never missed Sunday dinner. Never. Not since her mother passed away 10 years ago. It was our tradition, our anchor. She was my only child. The center of my universe. We were a team. When she didn't show up, I called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. I felt a small prickle of unease. That wasn't like her. I called the house phone. Mark, her husband, answered on the third ring. "Hey, Robert," he said. His voice was smooth. Too smooth. Mark always sounded like he was trying to sell you something. He was a real estate agent. Polished. Charming. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "She's resting, Dad." He sighed. He started calling me Dad right after the wedding. It always felt forced. "Ethan's got some kind of bug from daycare. I think she caught it." "Is she okay?" "Yeah, just tired. I told her to turn her phone off and sleep it off." I accepted it. Mark took care of her. He adored her. Or so I thought. But that was the first lie. And it was a good one. A week passed. I called every day. Her voicemail was full now. My texts delivered, but remained unread. The unease grew into a tight knot in my chest. This wasn't Sarah. She never went silent on me. I called Mark again. "Still sick?" I asked. The edge in my voice was sharp now. "It's kicking her butt, Robert," he said. He sounded perfectly exhausted. A convincing performance. "Did she see a doctor?" "Yes, of course." He said, "It's a nasty strain of the flu. Lots of fluids, lots of rest." He paused. "Don't worry, I've got it covered." He always had everything covered. That was Mark's thing. Control. I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe him. But my gut screamed that something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And I should have listened to my gut sooner. By the third week, the worry had become terror. 21 days. 21 days of silence. Sarah would have found a way to send a signal. A thumbs-up emoji. A quick call from the bathroom. Anything. I pictured her alone, struggling. Maybe too weak to call for help. Maybe Mark was overwhelmed. I couldn't sit in my quiet house anymore. I packed an overnight bag. My hands shook as I locked my door. I started the 3-hour drive to their suburban paradise, the house I helped them buy. I decided not to call ahead. I'd just show up. I'd take care of my girl. The drive was a blur of headlights and dark realizations. The closer I got, the tighter the knot in my chest pulled. I cracked my knuckles, one by one. An old habit. It didn't help. What if it was worse than the flu? What if she was in the hospital and Mark hadn't told me? I never imagined the truth was darker than any fear I could conjure. I arrived just after 9 p.m. The house was imposing. A modern structure of glass and stone that Mark always boasted about. But tonight it looked cold, like a tomb. Only a few lights were on downstairs. I used the spare key Sarah had given me years ago. The lock turned smoothly. The silence in the house was heavy, thick, and then the smell hit me. It wasn't sickness, not chicken soup simmering on the stove. It was bleach. Strong, stinging, industrial strength cleaner, the kind you use to scrub away evidence. The house was immaculate. Too immaculate. Sarah was organized, but she wasn't sterile. This felt wrong. It felt cold. "Hello?" I called out softly. Mark appeared from the kitchen. He was wiping his hands on a towel. He froze when he saw me. It was just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. Genuine shock, panic, followed quickly by a mask of polite surprise. "Robert, what are you doing here?" he asked. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, dead. "I couldn't stay away, Mark. I need to see her. Where is she?" He shifted his weight, subtly blocking the hallway leading to the bedrooms. He adjusted his expensive watch. He always fidgeted with it when he was nervous. "She's asleep," he said quickly. Too quickly. "It's been a rough day. I really shouldn't wake her." "I won't wake her," I insisted. I moved past him. He grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong, cold. "Robert, I'm serious," he said, his voice low. "The doctor said absolute rest. Your barging in here isn't helping." My blood ran cold. He had never spoken to me like that. Never touched me in anger. "Get your hand off me, Mark," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "That's my daughter." We stared at each other for a long moment. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. The only sound was the hum of the expensive refrigerator. He finally let go. "Fine," he spat. The charm vanished. The mask slipped. "But you're being ridiculous." I ignored him and walked down the hall. My heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew I was walking into a nightmare. I stopped at Ethan's door first. My grandson. He was 5 years old. A bright, noisy bundle of energy. My little buddy. I eased the door open. The room was lit by the dim glow of a spaceship nightlight. Ethan was in bed, the covers pulled up to his chin. His small, race-car-shaped bed. But he wasn't asleep. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. He looked terrified. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, kneeling by the bed. He didn't smile. He didn't jump up for a hug like he usually did. He just looked at me, and in that dim light, I saw a fear I had never seen on a child's face. It was an old fear. "Are you okay, Ethan? Are you sick?" He shook his head slightly, a small, jerky movement. "Where's Mommy?" His lower lip trembled. He glanced nervously toward the door. I knew Mark was hovering there, listening. He whispered one word. So soft. I almost missed it. "Gone." My heart stopped. "Gone? Gone where, sweetheart?" "Did she go on a trip?" He squeezed his eyes shut. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Daddy said she left," he whispered. Then he added the words that broke me. "'Cause I was bad." The cruelty of it hit me like a punch to the gut. My sweet grandson, thinking he was the reason his mother was gone. "You're not bad, Ethan," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You're the best boy in the world." I kissed his forehead. It felt cool. He wasn't sick. He was traumatized. I left the room, closing the door gently. Rage boiled inside me. A cold, focused rage. Mark was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. His face was smug. "What did you tell him?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. He was acting out. "Robert. Missing his mother," Mark said defensively. "I had to tell him something so he'd calm down." "So you told him she left because he was bad." The sheer malice stunned me. "I misspoke," Mark snapped, his composure cracking. "I'm stressed. I'm exhausted. I'm running my business and taking care of a sick kid. And frankly, I don't need your judgment right now." He was turning it on me, making me the villain. "You told me she was sick. You told him she left. Which is it, Mark?" "They're both true," he yelled. "She was sick of this life. Sick of me. Sick of him." He pointed towards Ethan's room. My stomach turned. The man was poison. I moved to the master bedroom door. I had to see for myself. I tried the handle. Locked. I turned back to Mark. Realism dawned like a sunrise of pure horror. "Why is this door locked, Mark?" "Because I don't want anyone disturbing her," he shouted, his face red. "You just said she left." I meant before she left," he stammered. "I locked it after she left, to preserve the room. Lies. Clumsy, desperate lies. Open the door." "No, open the door, or I swear to God I will kick it down." I built houses. I knew how to dismantle them. And I was ready to dismantle him. Mark paled. He knew I meant it. He fumbled with a key on his keyring. His hands were shaking. He unlocked the door. He opened it just a crack. The room was dark. The curtains drawn tight. I could see the vague shape of someone in the bed. Relief washed over me for a split second. She was here. He was just being dramatic. "Sarah?" I whispered. No response. I pushed the door open wider. Mark tried to stop me. "Robert, don't." I shoved him back. Hard. He stumbled against the wall. I stepped inside and flipped on the light. The bed wasn't empty. But it wasn't Sarah. It was just pillows, arranged under the duvet to look like a sleeping body. A sick, twisted deception. He had been playing house for 3 weeks. I spun around. Mark was backing away slowly. His eyes darted toward the front door. "Where is she?" The words were barely a sound. My voice was gone. "Oh, no," he stammered. "She left. I told you. She left me. You faked her being in the bed. You lied to me for 3 weeks. You lied to your son." My legs felt weak. The betrayal was massive. Overwhelming. She was stressed. We were fighting. She said she needed space. He babbled. "I didn't want you to worry. I thought she'd come back. I was embarrassed." 3 lease, Mark. "And you didn't call the police?" "I didn't want to ruin her reputation," he cried. "I was protecting her." Everything clicked into place. The lies, the locked door, the bleached house, Ethan's terror. He was hiding something. Something terrible. "You're lying," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You did something to her." "No, I swear." He was crying now. Pathetic, desperate tears. "I loved her." I looked around the pristine bedroom. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. I noticed her favorite things were missing. The picture of her mother on the nightstand. The worn copy of the book she always read. If she had left, she would have taken those things. And she would never, ever leave Ethan. I pulled out my phone to call the police. Mark lunged at me. He was younger, faster. But I was fueled by a primal rage. A father's rage. I slammed him against the wall. The drywall cracked under the impact. "Where is my daughter?" I roared. He just sobbed, shaking his head wildly. A broken record of denial. I threw him to the floor and dialed 911. The silence that followed the call was heavy, broken only by Mark's pathetic sniffling and the distant sound of a siren. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway felt like a hammer blow against my skull. My entire world had shrunk down to this one terrible question. Where was Sarah? I stood over Mark. He didn't move. He just stared at the floor. My mind raced. Had he killed her? The thought was agonizing. My chest seized up. I couldn't breathe. I thought about Ethan, lying terrified in his bed. What had he seen? What horrors had unfolded in this sterile house? I had to protect him. I walked back to Ethan's room. He was still awake, his small body rigid. "Grandpa's here now, Ethan," I said softly. "You're safe. The police are coming to help us find Mommy." He nodded, but the fear didn't leave his eyes. He knew something. Something I didn't. When the police arrived, the house was suddenly full of noise and flashing lights. It felt surreal, like a movie scene. A man in a sharp suit introduced himself. Detective Miller. He had tired eyes and a grim expression. He chewed on a toothpick like it was his job. "I'm Robert," I told him, my voice strained. "My daughter, Sarah, is Miss. Her husband, Mark, has been lying for 3 weeks." Mark started babbling again, playing the victim. "She left me. I was just too ashamed to admit it. He attacked me. He pointed a trembling finger at me." Detective Miller looked at Mark with cold disdain. Then he turned to me. "Tell me everything, Robert." I told him the missed calls, the flu lies, the locked door, the pillows, Ethan's fear, the smell of bleach. "He cleaned," I muttered. "He cleaned everything." Detective Miller nodded slowly. "We need to search the house." They started in the master bedroom, closets, bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. They moved through the house. Methodical, thorough, kitchen, living room, garage. They searched for an hour, finding nothing. Mark had done a thorough job erasing her. Mark sat handcuffed on the sofa, smug again. He thought he had won. "If she left, where's her car?" I asked. "Her car is in the garage," Mark said quickly. "She took an Uber. Where's her purse? Her phone? Her keys?" "I don't know. She just left. She wanted a clean break." The police were getting frustrated. Without evidence of a crime, their hands were tied. "I'm telling you she would never leave her son," I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. Detective Miller believed me. I could see it in his eyes. But belief wasn't evident. I went back to Ethan's room. He was the key. He had seen something. He was sitting up in bed now, hugging his knees. "Ethan, I need your help," I said gently. "I know you're scared, but Mommy needs us." He hesitated, glancing towards the door. "Daddy said not to talk about it," he whispered. "Tony, he said the monster would get me." My blood ran cold. The monster. "You can talk to me, buddy. I won't let any monster get you." He pointed a trembling finger toward the master bedroom down the hall. "Mommy was playing hide and seek," he whispered. "But she didn't come out." "Where was she hiding, Ethan?" "In the big closet. Mommy and Daddy's closet." "What happened?" "Daddy found her. They were yelling. Mommy was crying." "And then what happened?" "Daddy took her away." "Where?" He shook his head. Tears welling. "I don't know. It was dark. It wasn't enough." I looked around the room, desperate. His colorful drawings were taped to the wall. Spaceships. Dinosaurs. That's when I noticed the drawing taped behind the door. It was different. It was drawn with a black crayon. Dark, messy, angry. It showed a large figure looming over a smaller figure lying on the floor, and next to them a rectangle with lines on it. "What's this, Ethan?" I asked, pointing to the rectangle. "That's the bad place," he whispered, "where the monster lives." I looked closer. The rectangle looked familiar. It looked like a vent. I ran back to the living room. "The vents! We need to check the vents!" We rushed to the master bedroom closet, the one Ethan had mentioned. I yanked the vent cover off the wall. It was dark inside, but the smell that wafted out was not bleach. It was something else. Something metallic, faintly sweet. The smell of decay. Detective Miller shone his flashlight inside. "Nothing, just ductwork." Defeated, I slumped against the wall. I had been so sure. Mark started laughing. A hysterical, broken sound. "See? I told you. She's gone. She left me. And you're all crazy." The sound of his laughter twisted something inside me. It was so callous, and then I saw it, a small detail that didn't fit. In the corner of the closet, almost hidden by a rack of Mark's expensive suits, was a small, stuffed lion, Leo, Ethan's favorite toy. I had given it to him. He never slept without it. Why was it here? I picked it up. It was damp. I looked at the carpet beneath it. It's slightly darker than the surrounding area. I knelt down, touched the carpet. Wet. "The carpet is wet," I said, my voice trembling. Detective Miller came over. He touched the carpet, sniffed his fingers. "It smells like cleaner," he said. "He must have spilled something." "No," I said, realization hitting me like a physical blow. "He didn't spill anything. He cleaned something." I started pulling at the edge of the carpet. It came up easily. It had recently been pulled up and put back down. Underneath the carpet, the padding was soaked, and the concrete floor beneath that was stained. A dark reddish-brown color. Blood. A lot of it. Detective Miller gasped. Mark stopped laughing. "What did you do, Mark?" I whispered, horrified. He just stared at the stain. His face pale, sweaty. The game was up. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The officers drew their weapons. "Mark, you are under arrest for the suspected murder of Sarah," Detective Miller said, his voice cold and steady. They hauled him away. His denials echoed down the hallway. "I didn't kill her. She fell. It was an accident." I stood in the closet, staring at the bloodstain, my mind numb. My daughter, my beautiful, vibrant daughter, gone. This was all that was left of her. We thought the nightmare was over. It had barely begun. The police sealed off the house. A crime scene. They brought in a forensic team. I sat in my car, holding Ethan. He had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by the terror. I watched the sun rise, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange, a cruel contrast to the darkness that had consumed my life. The waiting was agonizing. Hours turned into days. The police questioned Mark relentlessly. He admitted they had fought, that she had fallen and hit her head in the closet. He panicked. He cleaned up the herb. But he insisted she had left afterward, that she was alive when she walked out the door. Without a body, the police struggled to build a case. They had the blood. It was Sarah's. But they couldn't prove she was dead. I refused to believe it. I couldn't. If I accepted that, I would shatter completely. I organized search parties. I put up flyers. I talked to the media. I became that desperate father you see on the news, begging, pleading, but weeks went by. No sign of Sarah. The hope started to fade, replaced by a cold, heavy grief. I took Ethan home with me. My quiet house was now filled with the sounds of a child, a bittersweet reminder of what I had lost. Ethan was withdrawn, plagued by nightmares. He woke up screaming for his mother. I tried to be strong for him, but I was breaking inside. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was consumed by guilt. Why hadn't I seen the signs? Why hadn't I protected her? One evening, I was sorting through Sarah's belongings. The police had released them to me. I opened a jewelry box. Inside was a small silver locket. I opened it, a picture of Sarah and me. Her college graduation. She was smiling. So proud, so full of life. I clutched the locket. The metal dug into my palm. The grief washed over me, suffocating. I fell to my knees and wept, deep, racking sobs. I had failed her. The silence in the room was broken only by my own despair. But as the sobs subsided, a new emotion surfaced. Cold, sharp determination. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let Mark win. Sarah deserved justice. I started investigating on my own. I needed to know why. Why had he done this? If this story is gripping you, please drop a like. It means a lot. I started with Sarah's friends. That's when I tracked down Janet Lee. Janet had been Sarah's best friend since childhood, but I hadn't seen her in years. Mark had isolated Sarah, pushed everyone away. We met at a small coffee shop. Janet looked nervous. She kept stirring her coffee obsessively, the spoon clinking against the ceramic. "He's dangerous, Robert," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Mark is not who you think he is." "What do you mean, Janet? Tell me." "He was controlling, verbally abusive. He monitored her phone calls. He controlled their finances. Sarah was miserable. I felt sick. How could I have missed this? I was so blinded by his charm." "She was going to leave him, Robert," Janet said, tears in her eyes. "She told me she was scared of him. She was making a plan, saving money. She never told me. She didn't want to worry you. She thought she could handle it. This changed everything. This wasn't an accident. It was premeditated. But why the extreme measures? Why the lies? That's when I decided to look into Mark's business. I contacted Barry Green, Mark's former business partner. Barry was a slick, fast-talking guy in an expensive suit, but he was also bitter. Mark had screwed him over. We met at a bar downtown, the kind of place Mark loved. Dark wood and overpriced whiskey. "Mark's a snake, Robert," Barry told me, swirling the ice in his glass. "His business is a house of cards. It's failing. He's leveraged to the hilt."
"What else?"
I pressed. "He's got gambling debts, massive loans. He's drowning, Robert. Desperate." "How desperate?" Barry leaned in. "Desperate enough to do anything. And Sarah had money." The motive, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Sarah had recently inherited a significant amount of money from her grandmother. Over $1 million. Money that Mark couldn't touch without her signature. He wanted the money, and Sarah had said no. She was planning to leave him. So he stopped her. I needed to know how deep the hole was. I started digging into Mark's associates, the ones Barry hinted at. It led me to a dingy pool hall across town. A man named Vinny, the Shark Malone. A loan shark. Vinny was exactly what you'd expect. Thick neck, heavy rings, and eyes that looked right through you. "Mark Peterson?" Vinny sneered. "Yeah, I know that weasel. He owes me. Big time." "How much?" "6 figures. And the interest is killing him." Vinny leaned in, his breath hot on my face. "He was desperate, old man. He told me he was coming into money. Said his wife had a windfall. The picture was complete. It wasn't just greed, it was survival. And he had sacrificed my daughter to save himself." I took all this information to Detective Miller. He listened intently. "The motive is strong, Robert," Miller admitted, chewing on his toothpick. "Janet's testimony, Barry's insights, Vinny's threats. It paints a dark picture. So you can charge him with murder. We still need the body, Robert. We need concrete evidence linking him to her disappearance. We can't prove murder without proof of death. I felt helpless, trapped. Mark was going to get away with it. The system was failing, Sarah. I had to find her. I went back to the neighborhood one last time. I talked to the neighbors again. Maybe someone saw something they didn't realize was important. I talked to Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman next door. She was observant. Nosy but observant. I told the police everything, she said, peering through her curtains. Please, Mrs. Gable, think again. Anything unusual? She hesitated. Well, there was one thing. It was late, the night she disappeared. I saw Mark in the backyard. What was he doing? He was working on Ethan's treehouse.
Hammering.
In the middle of the night, I thought it was very strange. The treehouse. Mark hated that treehouse. He said it was an eyesore. I rushed back to the house. It was still a crime scene, but I got permission from Detective Miller to check the backyard. I climbed the ladder to the treehouse. It was small, cramped. I looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. But then I noticed the floorboards. They looked new, freshly installed. I pried one up with a crowbar I found in the shed. Underneath, there was a shallow space. I found a small metal box. My heart pounded. I opened it. It wasn't Sarah. It was her purse, her phone, her keys. The things Mark claimed she took with her. He had hidden them, evidence that she hadn't left voluntarily. It was progress, but it wasn't her. I was crushed, defeated. I sat in the treehouse, staring at her phone. The battery was dead. I felt like I was losing my mind. Where could she be? I went back inside the house for a final walkthrough, before the bank took it over. I walked through the empty rooms, haunted by the memories of my daughter. I felt her presence everywhere. I ended up in Ethan's room. I sat on his small, race car bed. I thought about the night I had arrived. The terror in his eyes. The drawing of the bad place. I looked at the drawing again. I had kept it. The rectangle with lines. It was an event. I had been wrong. I looked around the room, trying to see it through a child's eyes. What else looked like a rectangle with lines? The bookshelf, the dresser, the toy box. And then I saw it. The bed. The race car bed was custom built. Mark had boasted about designing it himself. He was so proud of it. It was low to the ground. A solid wooden frame. The mattress sat on top of wooden slats. Rectangles with lines. My heart started pounding. A frantic rhythm against my ribs. No, it couldn't be. It was too horrific. I knelt down, looked under the bed. Dark, dusty. Nothing. I lifted the mattress. Heavy, awkward. I set it aside. The wooden slats looked normal, but something felt off. They were too thick, too close together. I examined the frame. I noticed a small seam in the wood, almost invisible. I pushed on the seam. Nothing. I tried to lift the slats. They were screwed down.
Why would you screw down the slats of a child's bed?
Unless you didn't want anyone looking underneath. My breath caught in my throat. The silence in the room was deafening. I ran to the garage, grabbed a screwdriver from Mark's perfectly organized workbench. I ran back to Ethan's room. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the screwdriver. I started removing the screws. One by one, the metal scraping against the wood. It felt like an eternity. Every turn of the screw was agony. Please be empty. Please let me be wrong. When the last screw was removed, I lifted the slats. They came up in one solid piece, hinged at the back. Underneath the slats there was a shallow compartment, carved into the wooden frame, a coffin, and inside the compartment, curled up in a fetal position, was Sarah. She was pale, thin, her clothes ragged, her hair matted. She was unconscious, barely breathing, but she was alive. I gasped, staggering back. The shock was so immense I couldn't process it. She was here, the whole time, right under her son's bed. While he slept, while he cried for her, she was right there. The horror of it was incomprehensible. The monster had hidden her in the cruelest place imaginable. I called 911, my voice hysterical. She's here. I found her. She's alive. Send an ambulance. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They carefully lifted her out of the compartment. She was severely dehydrated, malnourished, drugged. They rushed her to the hospital. I followed, my mind reeling. Mark hadn't killed her. He had done something worse. He had kept her prisoner, hidden in the darkness, while he systematically drained her bank account, forging her signature on the documents transferring the inheritance money. He had drugged her, starved her, tortured her, right under the nose of his own son. The cruelty was staggering. At the hospital, the doctors worked frantically to stabilize her. I waited in the sterile waiting room, the smell of antiseptic filling my nostrils, a cruel reminder of the bleach smell in the house. Hours later, a doctor came out. Dr. Anya Sharma. She specialized in trauma. She's stable, she said, her voice grave. But the road to recovery will be long. She's suffered severe physical and psychological trauma. We don't know the full extent of the damage yet. I was allowed to see her. She was hooked up to machines, tubes running in and out of her body. She looked so small, so fragile. Broken, I sat by her bed, holding her hand, whispering to her that she was safe, that I was here, that I would never let anyone hurt her again. She didn't wake up for 3 days. When she finally opened her eyes, they were dull, vacant, haunted by the horrors she had endured. She didn't recognize me at first. She flinched when I touched her, curling up in fear. "It's me, sweetheart," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "It's Dad. You're safe." Slowly, agonizingly, she started to come back. The memories returned in fragments. Terrifying flashbacks. Darkness. Hunger. Pain. She told me everything. The fight about the money. Mark drugging her coffee. Waking up in the darkness. Trapped. Suffocating. The worst part, hearing Ethan playing above her, crying for her, and being unable to call out to him. The drugs kept her weak, paralyzed. Mute. Mark had kept her alive just long enough to liquidate all her assets. The transfers were scheduled to finalize the day after I found her. He was planning to kill her once the money was transferred. He was going to dispose of her body and claim she had run away. The monster he truly was had been revealed. One afternoon, while Sarah was still recovering, Detective Miller brought Mark to the hospital. A legal formality. They needed Sarah to formally identify him. He was led into her room, handcuffed, shackled, his expensive suit replaced by a prison jumpsuit. He looked disheveled, but his eyes were still cold, dead. When he saw her, lying in the hospital bed, frail and broken, he didn't show a flicker of remorse. No guilt, no shame, just a cold, calculated indifference. Sarah started shaking. Her heart monitor beeped erratically. She tried to make herself smaller, to disappear into the bed. "Is this your husband, Mrs. Peterson?" Detective Miller asked, his voice tight with disgust. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, her eyes fixed on the wall above his head. Mark looked at her. A smirk played on his lips. "Barely," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "She looks terrible." The callousness of the remark stunned everyone. Even Detective Miller looked shocked. I lunged at him. The officers held me back. "You animal," I roared. "You did this to her." Mark just laughed, a cold, empty sound that echoed in the sterile room. "I did what I had to do," he said, looking directly at me. "She should have just given me the money. She always was stubborn." He was led away, leaving behind a trail of devastation. The encounter solidified my resolve. He wasn't just a greedy, desperate man. He was a sociopath, a monster devoid of empathy. And I was going to make sure he never saw the light of day again. The sterile hospital became our sanctuary. Sarah's recovery was slow, painful. The physical wounds healed faster than the psychological ones. The darkness still clung to her, a shadow that refused to leave. She couldn't stand the dark. She couldn't stand silence. I stayed by her side, a silent guardian, witnessing her struggle to reclaim her life. I brought Ethan to see her. The reunion was heartbreaking. He was hesitant at first, scared of this fragile woman who looked like his mother but felt like a stranger. He clutched Leo, the stuffed lion, tight against his chest. But love finds a way. He crawled onto her bed, burying his face in her neck. She held him tight, her body shaking with silent sobs, the first tears she had shed since waking up. "I missed you, Mommy," he whispered. "I missed you too, baby," she choked out, her voice raw. That moment, that simple embrace, was the turning point. The healing truly began. Mark's trial was a media circus. The details of his crime were so shocking, so gruesome the public couldn't look away. The monster under the bed case, they called it. He pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney, a slick woman named Ms. Evans, painted a picture of a desperate man driven to extremes by financial ruin. They tried to blame Sarah, claimed she was unstable, that she hid herself to frame him. It was absurd, disgusting. The prosecution brought in everyone. Janet Leigh testified about Sarah's fear. Barry Green and Vinnie Malone testified about Mark's debts and desperation. Dr. Sharma testified about the extent of Sarah's injuries and the drugs in her system. But the turning point was Sarah's testimony. She walked to the stand, her head held high. Her voice trembled, but it was clear, strong. She looked the jury in the eye and recounted the horrors she had endured. She spoke of the darkness, the hunger, the terror, the feeling of being buried alive. She spoke of his cruelty, his indifference, his calculated plan to steal her life and her legacy. "He didn't just want my money," she said, her voice ringing with power. "He wanted my silence. He wanted to erase me, but I am still here." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts: kidnapping, attempted murder, forgery, theft, false imprisonment. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Justice had been served. The monster was locked away forever. But the victory felt hollow. It couldn't erase the scars, couldn't give back the time we had lost, couldn't undo the trauma. But it was a start. We sold the house. We couldn't bear to look at it, knowing the horrors it concealed. Sarah and Ethan moved in with me. My quiet house was once again filled with life, laughter, and the messy reality of a family rebuilding itself. It wasn't easy. There were still nightmares, triggers, moments of paralyzing fear. Sarah couldn't be in small spaces. She slept with the lights on. Ethan refused to sleep in the race car bed. We burned it, but we faced them together. Bound by a shared trauma and a resilient love, Sarah continued therapy with Dr. Sharma, slowly untangling the web of manipulation and abuse. She regained her strength, her voice, her identity. She even started a foundation for victims of domestic abuse, turning her pain into purpose. Ethan, too, started healing. With therapy and love, the fear in his eyes was replaced by a newfound resilience. He started drawing again, but this time, the drawings were filled with sunshine, flowers, and a family united against the darkness. One evening, a year after the ordeal, we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. Ethan was playing in the yard, chasing fireflies. His laughter echoed in the quiet evening air, a sound I thought I might never hear again. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. She took a deep breath. "We made it, Dad," she said softly. "We did, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. I looked at her, my daughter, a survivor, a warrior. She was scarred, but not broken. She was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The darkness had tried to consume us, but we had found the light. We had faced the monster and emerged victorious. We were a family, forged in the fires of betrayal and trauma, bound by a love that was stronger than any darkness. And as I sat there, surrounded by the people I loved most in the world, I finally felt a sense of peace. The silence was no longer deafening. It was comforting, a quiet promise of a brighter future. The monster was gone, but the love remained, and that, in the end, was all that mattered. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.